Today we're going to go over some efficient and exploitive ways of leveling the core abilities in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, such as alchemy, scholarship, craftsmanship, and so on.
So to jump right in, first we have alchemy. So to start we'll need Henry's Fox. If you're unfamiliar with these, then they're essentially the highest quality version of a Fox potion, which gives 7 speech, increased reading speed, and the most important part, 50% XP gain. In order to make Henry potions, we'll need to get our alchemy level to 16 first. To do so, we'll be making marigold potions, one of the easiest, if not the easiest potions to make and obtain ingredients for. But before we start, a helpful tip. If you're going to use the alchemist's bench in Troskowitz and don't quite have the funds yet to pay for a bed, you can head to the back of the town. There is a wooden hut with a bed inside. You can sleep in that without being interrupted or told to move. First we'll need to find a large quantity of nettles. Fortunately they grow pretty much everywhere, especially in build-up areas. Since it grows everywhere, just walk around Troskowitz and pick up what you find. You'll soon have over 100. The next ingredient we'll need is marigold. This is a common herb that can be found in most fields, however there is a specific location east of Trotsky Castle where they grow in large clumps. Just head to the location on the map. There is also a POI near your location in the small forest south. It holds an abundance of alchemy ingredients both growing and in sacks dotted around the garden, as well as a neat hat. Moving on, you'll now need to start making marigold potions. First you'll need to add water to the cauldron. Then 1 nettle. Lower the cauldron to boil.
Place 2 marigolds into the mortar and grind. Once you've ground the marigold, place the mortar down and raise the cauldron.
Simply pick up the marigold, placing the contents into the cauldron. Once you've done that, you can then pour. This will give you strong marigold potions and about 132 XP. So assuming you're around level 7 in alchemy, you'll need a total of 3690 XP in order to get to level 16, which requires you to do this process around 30 times or so, which will take roughly around 30 to 35 minutes. Now that you've reached level 16, we're able to start making Henry's Fox potions. For that we will need nettle, St. John's wort, belladonna and charcoal. We've already went over how you find nettles, so we can skip that one. St. John's wort can be pretty rare, and it's difficult to wander around and find. It's quite rare that you'll come across it naturally. So for this one, I'll show you specific locations as to where you can find it. There is one location specifically in Samine where it's very abundant. Go to the location on the map and you'll find more than enough for our potions. You can collect 50 or so. Belladonna is another rare one, but also very difficult to spot as it blends in well with the rest of the foliage. However, there is a POI that contains around 30 belladonna in a basket, not too far from Bozima's hut.
Head to the location on the map and you'll find the basket.
Once you've taken everything from the basket, there will be more belladonna around on plants, so do some exploring. Next we have charcoal. Unfortunately, we cannot actually make this ourselves. It can only be bought from shops. The blacksmith in Takov sells it, as well as the alchemist and merchant in Troskowitz. If you need more, then their shops reset after 48 hours.
Just skip time or sleep.
If you don't have enough coin to purchase the charcoal, you can either sell some of the marigold potions that you've made already,
or head to Trotsky Quarry and loot the 549 groschen high above the archery range.
Now that we've gathered all the ingredients we need, next we'll be brewing the potion. Pour oil into the cauldron. Next place St. John's wort and nettle into the mortar, grind and place in the cauldron.
Place contents into the cauldron and lower.
Grind the charcoal, then place the mortar back down. Raise the cauldron, then pour the ground charcoal into the cauldron. Put belladonna into the cauldron, then lower. Wait until the cauldron smokes, around a few seconds, then pour. You now have your first Henry's Fox potions. Keep making until you have about 30 of them.
All XP earned will now be under the assumption you have the XP buff.
Now moving on to perks. Purely opinionated, not necessarily all correct either, but this tends to be what I select, or tend to select for a playthrough. So for level 6 we've got Potion Seller. It's really handy to have early when you're selling some of your potions, especially the Marigold potions. and the extra 30% can make a huge difference. Order preservation can be good, but since this guide shows you exactly where to locate the herbs, and you're going to be brewing straight away, then it's not necessarily needed. Secrets of Matter 1, without a doubt, having more potions brewed at a time is such a time saver later on, and it's pretty rare that you're going to make a mistake with the brewing process. If you're following the recommendations then you don't unlock anything at level 10, either go for Order Preservation or Enthusiast. Both have their uses. Enthusiast has an immediate effect.
Level 12, Dark Arts Apprentice. This does limit your brewing hours between 12 AM and 4:30 AM, however it essentially acts as a secret of equilibrium in that time frame,
allowing you to use dried herbs instead. If you're not that bothered about that, then you can use Water of Life as well as a solid choice, which gives you a flat 25% increase on your Marigold Potion. Level 14, up to the player, either Secret of Equilibrium 1 or Secrets of Matter 2. As someone that will brew potions in big bulks and just genuinely enjoys running around picking herbs, I will just spend the time gathering fresh herbs so I spend less time brewing potions. So personally, I prefer Secrets of Matter 2. However, with Secret of Equilibrium 1, you are able to use all dried herbs any time of the day rather than just between midnight and 4:30. Level 16, Secret of Secrets, the one that we've been working towards. This enables you to brew Henry's Fox, which gives you a +7 in speech, increased reading speed, and the most important part, 50% XP gain for 2 days. Scholarship is an important stat, particularly for the 20% XP bonuses it adds to select skills. That's why I placed it so early on the list for leveling. Scholarship can be quite an expensive skill to level up initially, particularly due to the need for books in order to level it. There is a ways around that. We can just steal the books instead. As long as you're doing a run where you're stealing with Henry, then you can just steal the majority of the books that you'll require. Even with a low thief level, there are some books in the scribe's room in Troskowitz that you're able to steal. A stack being behind the scribe on the shelf himself. Be careful when trying to steal in the scribe's room though, as the bailiff does wander in. If you decide to steal the books, then you can pickpocket the scribe for his keys. I managed to do this with level 5 thieving, so it's definitely possible. The scribe has 2 sets of keys. You can take one and go check to see if it's the correct one, or you can just take both whilst you're doing it. It may take more than one attempt however. Once you have the correct key, head out of the red house, turn right and go up the stairs. Open the door and loot the chest on the right. This will contain all the books that the scribe sells. This is a good starting point to leveling your scholarship. The scribe also has a set of spectacles on him that you can pickpocket. They give you a hidden +5 in scholarship, make him reading even quicker. Make sure you're actually sitting down when you are reading the books. All skill books help you gain XP towards scholarship, however there are skill books specifically aimed at scholarship itself. The first one is Basics of Philosophy. It's located at a POI south of Takov in a basket under a tree. The next one is Master Studies 2, located back in the scribe's room. We already went over where the stack of books are, however if you missed it, we'll go back over it again. Head to the scribe's room, look at the cupboard on the left, there's a stack of 3 books there. The book we're going for is the bottom one. And finally we have Master Studies 4. It does require level 15 scholarship to read, however it will likely get you that last level to level 16 and requires you to lockpick an easy chest. It's located in the north part of Apollonia, east of Trotsky Castle. This chest also contains Product of Skill Hands 3, which will come in more useful later on when we're doing our craftsmanship leveling. So make sure you take that, as well as the other trinkets that you can sell. The last tip on leveling scholarship is dialogue. You'll gain scholarship experience with passing skill-related skill checks and exploring dialogue options. Early quests such as the Hermit, where you speak with the NPCs at Troskowitz, and the Samine Wedding will grant you the experience just from speaking with NPCs, exploring their dialogue options. Now moving on to the perks. Level 6, the only option is Cushion, but it's actually a really good one. It increases your comfort level by 50% when sitting down to read, which again will just make the whole process of reading books quicker. Level 8 heavily depends on what you're going to level next. If you're following the video, then choose Wonders of Man, which increases your craftsmanship and thievery XP by 20%. Level 10, Liberal Arts, allows you to see the difficulty level in skill checks. Really handy later on. Level 12, Fundamentals of Law. Although the initial perk isn't great, it's a prerequisite for a much better perk. Fundamentals of Medicine I don't find that helpful in comparison. Level 14, choose either Contemplative or another XP boost perk, based on the choices selected so far. The only option that unlocks it at level 14 is Fundamentals of Theology, which I just don't find that helpful, unless you're playing hardcore mode. Level 16, Fundamentals of Law 2, really good method of gaining scholarship XP. From here you can just punch a guard, or commit some sort of petty crime, and try and talk your way out of it, giving you a good amount of XP. This can be used alongside Liberal Arts, as well to check to see how easy it's going to be to talk your way out of it. Next up we have Craftsmanship. One of my favourite skills to level, as I just enjoy the blacksmithing in the game, though I do wish it was a bit more fleshed out. To begin, head to Takov and do the first Radovan quest. This is the tutorial for blacksmithing. It will unlock the bed nearby and give you some resources. Many will tell you that reducing the condition of a sword to 0, then sharpening it on the stone back to 100% is the best way to level your craftsmanship. However, based on my own tests, it took me 3 minutes and 25 seconds to get it from 88% to 28%, then back to 100%. Reducing the condition on the stone took most of that time, and netted me a total of 89 XP. However, when I was making a bearded axe, which took me 2 minutes and 25 seconds, at level 7 craftsmanship, it netted me a total of 264 XP. So based on my own tests, I much prefer the method of just making bearded axes.
I've always preferred just making bearded axes to level, as you can make some groschen on the back of it too, which can be handy early.
So if it wasn't obvious, to level craftsmanship we're going to make bearded axes. You can get the recipe from Radovan for 160 groschen or so, and it requires 1 steel and 1 scrap metal. You will already have some from the tutorial quest that you did, however we're going to need more. Radovan has 12 scrap metal and 2 steel in his shop, buy all of it. Then head to Troskowitz. From here we're going to head to the merchant Jurg. He has 5 scrap metal and 4 steel. For an extra 2, go to the very easy locked chest to the left of the blacksmiths and Takov. It's in the pigsty. Steel being the bottleneck here, we're going to want to stock up on as much as we can. You can get 9 in total on your first day. You're then able to get 7 steel and 17 scrap every 48 hours, after the blacksmith and merchant store reset. Of course, you'll only need to buy 7 scrap per reset, as the recipe requires only 1 of each. You can just skip time by 48 hours, sleeping and eating when needed. Once you've made a good amount of axes, always make sure to sharpen them at the sharpening stone. This gives you more XP and increases their value. Radovan will likely run out of groschen before you can sell all of your axes to him. Either store them in the chest in your bedroom to sell to other vendors, or wait for his groschen to reset.
A tip, you have a leather apron and leather gloves in your bedroom. Equipping them gives you a boost in craftsmanship,
making your blacksmithing even quicker. Now moving on to books. If you're following the video, then we've already picked up the products of Skillhand 3. If not, go to the north part of Apollonia, east of Trotsky Castle. There is a POI named Ruin in the Rocks, and the book is in an easy locked chest. Now moving on to perks. Level 6, Razor Sharp. A few other options, each valid in their own right. However, the cheapest and most obtainable buff I think makes the biggest difference is from Razor Sharp. Level 8 through maintenance. Again, another debatable choice. 20% cheaper repairs is pretty nice, especially later on in the game. However, this early on, it's much cheaper for you to be buying or stealing armor kits and repairing yourself, so I prefer having my armor last a little bit longer. Level 10, Hardened Steel. It works nicely with Razor Sharp, allowing your weapon to have the buff a little bit longer. Keen Eye is also good as well, however you will likely be using armor kits still at this point. Level 12, Locksmith or Totally Legit. Both work in this instance, however since we're going to need lockpicks leveling up our thieving, I typically take this to save myself the issue of running out of lockpicks, as well as the fact that you're likely not stealing anything worth a lot of groschen in the Trotsky region, it's just not needed immediately. Level 14, another either or, but the buff you have from your armor durability lasts a total of 40% longer, which is really huge, compared to the 10% buff in bow power, so I tend to stick with through maintenance too. The one we've been working towards,
choose Martin's Secret,
allowing us to make level 4 or MJ weapons, specifically for when we obtain Henry's sword further in the main story. Make sure to drop a save before you attempt to reforge his sword though, in case you don't get the level 4 quality. Next, moving on to thievery. For this one, we're just going to steal everything that isn't nailed down. Easiest way to start is to head to Miller Crazel in the south. Once you speak with him, he will let you practice your thievery skill, enabling you to gain a few levels quickly and without consequence. Once you've gained a few levels from the tutorial, head to Troskowitz and wait until night, and start lockpicking doors.
You will likely be limited to very easy, and potentially medium if you've got level 10 thieving already.
But a lot of the doors in Troskowitz are ideally really low level anyways, so it shouldn't make a difference. The merchant is a good choice initially. He has low level locks on his front doors, typically easy, and plenty of NPCs to pickpocket whilst they're asleep. Just make sure you don't get caught. The more expensive an item is pickpocketed, the more XP you will gain. Another good location is the Alchemist. He does have a dog that wanders the grounds though, so keep an eye out, otherwise you'll bark and alert the others.
Books, the Rule of St. Dismas, east of Troskowitz at Naga Ignatius' house, in the toilet outside. Now moving on to perks.
Level 6, Silent Fiddler is my preference.
A 75% reduction in noise in your lockpick breaks is massive, however Nimble Fingers is also just as valid.
Level 8, Rapid Flight. I often get greedy when pickpocketing, and it can cause me to get caught at times. Having this as a backup just in case is really useful, especially early game when the pickpocketing is really slow. Level 10, Thief's Eye.
Compared to Hidden Pockets, this one has more use and utility early on, allowing you to see which items can be sold in the location that you're in.
Wherever Troskowitz has a guard outside the red house that seems very keen to search you.
But if I've got a lot of stolen items on me, then I just give him a wide berth.
He's the only one that seems to trigger the search. This is also the case if you fast travel to Troskowitz. It can trigger a search automatically in this one specific spot. Level 12, Lawbreak. I rarely use one-handed weapons, so I don't see the benefit of a 10% increase to a one-handed weapons damage. If that's your type of playstyle, it may be worth taking instead. Mischief Artist. Really good if you need the extra bit of level to make a certain chest easier to pick locks, especially when encountering chests that are very hard later on in the game, or just giving you the ability to pick locks
that are above your current level.
Level 16. Trafficker is the only perk that gets unlocked at this level, but it's handy for losing stolen item status quicker, especially later in the game when you're stealing thousands at a time. Next, moving on to Stealth. Stealth is largely leveled alongside Thievery, in that you are often crouched when sneaking around houses at night. However, there is an exploit to level it quicker if you need it to be. This exploit takes advantage of the large amount of NPCs during the Samin wedding quest. There is a spot where sneaking gives you an enormous amount of XP. When you're at the wedding, head straight to the grass section with the large tree. There's a staircase on the left that leads up to an attic. Head up top and sneak back and forth. Due to the large number of NPCs in the area, it gives a ton of XP. It's worth mentioning that when I tested this initially, it didn't actually work and I had to quit the main menu and then load back in for it to start working. If you don't end up using the exploit, there is a location of a book that you can take advantage of. As quiet as a cat want.
Fence Whitebeard and Nomad's Camp sells this.
Now moving on to perks. Level 6, One Way or Another. This perk debuffs enemies that resist your attempted stun or kill. If I'm trying to stealthily kill an enemy, it's likely to reduce numbers before I engage them. Having a debuff be applied so I can kill them quicker is a handy failsafe to have. The alternative, 50% noise reduction in bushes, is handy, but as a situation I
often don't find myself in is hiding in bushes.
Level 8, Fleeting Shadow. A decent buff for when you're wanted for a crime lasting 120 seconds. Can get you out of difficult situations. Natural camouflage I don't find as useful, as it forces you into a certain playstyle of having dirty clothes, which reduces your charisma.
It doesn't tend to be something that I opt to play with. Level 10, Rodent is my choice.
There have been a number of times where I've opened or closed a door, and it's woken or alerted an NPC. This reduces the noise you make and the noise the door makes in general, so it can be really useful. Level 12, Surprise Attack. I often send a few arrows first before engaging fully to soften the enemies. Adding a debuff alongside plays really nicely into my type of playstyle. Level 14, Quick Hand. Makes it easier to lockpick and pickpocket without being spotted.
Really handy for certain quests when you're trying to steal during the day, or just when you're trying to rob someone during daylight.
Level 16, Fleeting Shadow 2. An upgrade on the first, offering a +5 bonus in stealth, +3 agility and vitality for 120 seconds when wanted for a crime. It's the only perk that gets unlocked at this level,
so it's the only option that we have.
Next up we have Survival, another skill that tends to just level alongside your gameplay. However, if you wanted to focus specifically on this, then there are a few effective methods. The first method I tried was hunting wildlife. Specifically, I killed 3 roe, butchered using the Bounty of the Wild trait, then dried all the meat gained, totaling about 303 XP in 3 minutes and 49 seconds. I then tried just gathering herbs, specifically nettles as they grow in large clumps. I managed to gather 213 nettles just from running around Troskowitz, then dried for a total of 484 XP in about 3 minutes and 57 seconds in total. Slightly longer than the hunting method, however a large amount of XP earned in comparison. So I'd recommend just collecting as many nettles, or any herb for that matter that are growing in large clumps, and then drying for extra XP.
If you really want to.
You can also take a bow out with you when you're gathering herbs, trying to get a row or 2 as you go. There are 2 books you can get to help you level. The first being Woodman's Journal 1. This is sold by Vitek in the west of the map. The second is Woodman's Journal 2, located just east of Takov, in a lock chest at an abandoned beehive's POI. Now moving on to perks. Level 6, on the Poacher's Trail. Handy if you decide to sell your dried herbs and meat. Wanderer is useful too, however a negligible benefit. Level 8, Flower Power. Super useful when you're trying to reach the 19 charisma for the Samin wedding, or just as bonus charisma. Level 10, Lucky Find. Enables you to find rings and such early, before they become common, giving extra charisma from wearing them. Having tested Leg Day, it only adds 3 XP per animation, so I just don't think it's worth it. Level 12.
Heartseeker and Leshy both have their uses. An extra 15% faster stamina regeneration in the forest is decent, especially since a lot of fights happen there, as well as gaining 1 point in strength, vitality and agility. However, Heartseeker gives you an extra 10% damage from arrows hitting either the back or chest. Also handy if your gameplay revolves around range combat.
Given the boost from Wildman later on, I'd lean on the Leshy side. Level 14. Master Fletcher is the only perk that unlocks at this level, increasing your arrow speed. Level 16, Wild Man, a big buff to Leshy.
It applies the effect to all wilderness, not just the forest. Plus it's the only perk that unlocks at this level.
Next we have Strength, really useful for combat and increasing carrying capacity. There are a couple methods for leveling, both are effective. Each focuses on different additional skills.
The first method is walking encumbered.
For my test I had a carry capacity of 153 and doubled my weight to 306. And then I walked for 60 seconds, resulting in 108 XP earned in both strength and vitality. Another method is to compete in archery contests. Head to the one in Trotsky Quarry, that'll be the nearest one. Unless you're wanting to specifically level vitality alongside strength, then this is my preferred method, as it gives XP in 3 other different skills, rather than just the one. For this test it took me 50 seconds to complete an experienced archer's contest, using 10 arrows, giving me 90 strength XP, 90 agility, 203 marksmanship, and 163 warfare. A slight reduction in the amount of strength XP earned compared to the encumbered method, however I do think the additional XP earned elsewhere is a worthwhile trade-off, as well as the groschen earned through winning the contests. In my testing, I used a village dogwood bow, so you will likely get a better strength XP rewards using a higher level bow. Next we have the books. Strength of Knight 1, located in Blacksmith Radovan's house in Takov. Head up the ladders, you'll see a medium lock chest. I managed this with level 7 thievery, so it's definitely doable at lower level. It's best to do this during the day however, as it's a very tight location and 2 maids sleep there during the night. Just watch for the wife who lingers around the house during the day. Strength of Knight 2, located at the bottom of the stairs at the Troskovitz prison. There are a lot of patrolling guards around here, so just wait for them to finish their rotation away from the stairs and sneak down. Picklock the door on the right, and the book will be half buried in the hay near the back. Finally, perks. Level 6. Personally I prefer train hard, fight easy, allowing me to wield better weapons more effectively early. However, if you wanted a flat boost to your carry capacity, then hardworking lad is also viable. Level 8. Wrestler and pack mule are both viable here. However, my preference is pack mule for the £12 increased carry capacity, although having a better chance at winning a clinch is just as good. Level 10. Tight grip. There's nothing worse than trying to stealth kill an enemy and for them to resist it. Any increase I can get to better my chances of pulling a stealth attack off, the better in my opinion. Level 12. Strong as a bull. £20 increased carrying capacity is hard to pass up, more so when the alternative is a shield based perk, when I rarely use shields anyways. Level 14. Grand Slam or Thrasher. This largely depends on what type of damage you typically tend to inflict. I often tend to select Thrasher, as it's a damage increase on all weapons rather than just blunt based. Level 16. Strong Arm. It's the only perk available at this level, but a decent perk to have anyways, allowing you to charge up heavy attacks without worrying about your stamina draining. For the last skill of this video, we have Horsemanship. To level Horsemanship, you're going to need a horse. If you haven't already, I'd recommend getting Pebbles from Samin to get his perk, which turns him into the best horse in the game. The first method is the most straightforward, and is the only automated one so far. Simply head to Trotsky Castle. Doesn't matter how far in the story you are, as you'll just be using the path that runs around it. Hold down the follow path button. This will auto path around Trotsky Castle in a big circle. From testing I did one lap, 1 minute 47 seconds, and gained 67 XP. Doing the same lap manually netted me 90 XP, and took me just under 60 seconds. The second method, other than just riding a horse around the map, is to do horse racing at the Nomads camp. They last a few minutes each, depending, are fun and give some groschen for winning. It's a more active method, but certainly a faster method of getting XP. Moving on to the book, Life in the Saddle 2. It's located at the Nomads camp, to the right of the cooking pot sitting on the carriage. Next we have the perks. Level 6, go for Saddler. I very rarely engage in combat from horseback, especially melee combat. Saddler for me is the only choice. Level 8, Head Start. Useful for when needing a quick getaway or an initial speed boost. Level 10 is Roadrunner. You're much more likely to be riding around on roads and paths than you are off-road. Level 12, Final Stretch. Definitely a must pick perk, gives your horse a boost of stamina when you're running low. Really handy to get more out of your horse's early game. Level 14, neither perk plays into my playstyle, and I'd go back and pick Ride Like the Wind to synergize with the next pick. Level 16, Ride Like the Wind 2. A nice boost to stamina consumption, totaling 15% from both perks. Lastly, as part of this video is Master Strike. Not a skill that you're going to be leveling, but something worth obtaining to help with combat, especially late game once enemies have better armor and become harder to defeat, and are more likely to block your attacks, as well as helping manage larger groups of enemies. To start, just head to Tomcat in the Nomads camp. Speak with him and he'll teach you a couple of combos and general basics of sword fighting. Afterwards, he'll often teach you a more advanced skill, but you'll have to beat him in a duel first. If you aren't wearing any armor, he'll ask you to go and get some. For this I believe you can just wear a pair of gauntlets and he'll let you duel him, but he hits pretty hard and will Master Strike you. There is a location for a solid set early on. South of Zelyov in the forest there is a bandit and his dog. His dog will wander. Let him get a bit of distance first and then stealth kill the bandit. You can loot the camp, get the armor without killing the dog, but I'd recommend killing the dog before you loot the camp so that you aren't interrupted. There's a gold cup on the carriage that sells for a decent amount, and some other highly priced assortments lying around, so make sure you have a good look around the camp. Return to Tomcat and tell him you'll duel him. Once you defeat him, he'll teach you the Master Strike. If you've gathered the armor and you're still struggling with the fight, you can just keep running into him to force a clinch.
Keep doing this until you defeat him.
Hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.